Well, good morning, Miramar, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tamara G. As always, check us out on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with us today, we have a very special guest to talk about something that impacts millions of families across America. They are actually going to be coming here to talk to families about how they can get help. It is Charles Fuschillo. He is the president and CEO of the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. And thank you so much for coming in and talking with us this morning about a topic that I don't think anybody has not been spared. Charles.
Well, I agree. I mean, in your state, there's nearly 600,000 people that are living with Alzheimer's disease, and throughout the country, more than 7 million people. So, last week I was in a room full of 250 people, and we were talking about the work here at the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. And I said, by a show of hands, just tell me how many people know somebody that has Alzheimer's disease that's connected to it. Tamara, 99% of the people raised their hand.
Wow.
That's how widespread spread and prevalent it is.
Wow. And for those who may not understand, and as the CEO and president, you're very close to it every day, but explain to a layperson exactly what it is. It's not just forgetfulness, because we all do that when we get older, right?
Exactly. So Alzheimer's disease is a progressive brain disorder that will impact an individual's memory, thinking, and the ability to carry out such simple tasks. It's a disease itself where there's always a confusion between Alzheimer's and dementia. So dementia itself is not a disease, but it's a terminology used to describe a combination of symptoms, loss of judgment, loss of other intellectual functions, as well as memory. One of the things I always like to emphasize is to know the signs and the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and it's memory loss, it's confusion about time and place, it could be changes in moods, difficulty in judging situations,
Okay.
struggling to complete familiar tasks that you do every single day. So if you see these signs in yourself or a loved one, I always like to emphasize address it immediately. Don't be in denial saying that, oh, he or she is just getting older, because Alzheimer's disease is not a normal progression of getting older.
Wow. Okay. So you just hit us with something there because I think a lot of people just assume that if you get older, if you happen to live to be in your 80s and 90s, that you're going to end up with Alzheimer's.
No, the answer is no. And I'll tell you why. We've dealt with individuals and families whose loved ones were 29 years old, passed away at the age of 34. Individuals in their 40s and 50s. So it's not a normal progression of aging. I always like to emphasize that. Look, Tamara, think about what you do in a day. We're on information overload. You
Yes.
know, today's printed news, by the time you read it in the morning, it's old already. I mean, so much happens with the cell phones, your internet, e-blast, emails, everything that keeps coming to you and all the social media. There's almost so much that we could absorb in our brains as we get older as well, but it's not a normal part of aging, and we like to emphasize that.
And with the Alzheimer's Association of America, you guys, and we're going to talk about how you're going to be here in South Florida because you are doing a nationwide tour coming up. We're the last stop on the tour, so you saved the best for last. You really did. Uh, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But, speaking to these different family members and people who have Alzheimer's, how do you work around that diagnosis once you get it? Because I think a lot of people think it's a death sentence. I think a lot of people think that there's no hope. There's nothing that you can do to at least be able to make it better or live with it. But I know, the Alzheimer's Association of America has been doing a lot of research, and you guys, can help.
Right. So we were founded, the Alzheimer's Foundation of America was founded by a caregiver, Mr. Bert Brodsky, who
Mhm.
was caring for his mom back in the 80s and 90s. And he's our chairman of the board, still very active at the age of 83. Incredible individual. He founded AFA because of the challenges that he went through as a caregiver, caring for his mom. So he would walk out of one room, come back, she would yell at him and say, "Where have you been? I haven't seen you in weeks. I haven't seen you in months." And he'd yell back, not knowing. So he founded the Alzheimer's Foundation of America to ensure that people are properly educated, that caregivers support, and we give that hope. by funding research. So what's critically important is that individuals have to understand a diagnosis is not a death sentence. You could still have maintain a quality of life, still maintain the dignity in somebody you care for, still maintain the dignity in somebody who has had a full life, and you want to ensure that they still have that respect. There are programs, there are services, there's education. There's so much that you can do for a loved one that we always encourage. We just opened up a new center on Long Island in New York called the AFA Barbara Rabinowitz and Education and Resource Center. It's day therapeutic programs. It gets individuals involved in card games, in memory games, in dance therapy, music therapy, so many things in pet therapy, so many things you can continue to do. We encourage caregivers to do that. But what's equally as important is the support for caregivers as well.
And man, you said a mouthful right there. We're going to talk quickly about the event that is coming up. It's going to be in Boca on November 19th, starting at 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. But let's talk about the Educating America Tour, Alzheimer's and Caregiving Conference that's happening in Boca. Because as you mentioned, you said over 600,000 people in our area that are living with Alzheimer's.
In your state, absolutely. So we created this initiative about 8.5 years ago, the Educating America Tour by the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, as a way to educate individuals, give them a greater understanding of brain health and wellness, the local support services that are critically important while you're caring for somebody, but also to talk about the current state of Alzheimer's research. So we're going to be at Boca Raton Marriott, the Boca Center, on
Mhm.
Town Center Circle in Boca on Wednesday, November 19th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Doors open up at 9 o'clock. So we're serving breakfast as well. It's all free. It's a free Alzheimer's and
Wow.
caregiving conference. And we're getting a tremendous response already. So I hope individuals sign up. It's alzfdn.org/tour.
Wow. And I can imagine that here in South Florida. So do you want people who are living with Alzheimer's as well as their caregivers to come, or is this strictly for caregivers?
No, this is open to everybody. And we have individuals from high schools and colleges, all the way through in their late stages of life that participate here. We encourage people to come who want to learn about brain health and wellness, who want to be proactive about their own health, who want to have a greater understanding of Alzheimer's disease, and learn from the experts that are going to be there. We're also going to be offering free memory screenings, and we like to call that a checkup from the neck up.
Well, let me tell you, I am actually familiar with Dr. Galvin, who is here from the University of Miami. I just did a brain study with UM
There you
um,
go.
for several reasons. Number one, my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia. So, that's my grandmother. And
Right.
then also, we have been told that people of color have kind of a higher incidence, or maybe we don't get it recognized as early and to get the help that we need. And so I did a whole brain study, and you're right, the memory tests and the things that are going on. Luckily, I'm okay now, but it was kind of an indicator of maybe where I have some issues or could possibly have some issues later on. So I thank them for actually doing this study, and it was totally free, which was amazing.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. I'll go back to when we were in elementary school and they told you exercise for 30 minutes a day, eat right, don't smoke, don't drink. That lifestyle, you need to carry that through.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're at greater risk. Plus your environment, where you live, where you grew up, but the lifestyle plays a key factor. Genetics play a very small percentage
Mhm.
in having a greater risk, but really lifestyle factors are critically important. And to have Dr. Galvin there is going to be great. He's going to talk about brain health and wellness. We're having other experts there. So I encourage everybody to sign up for the free Alzheimer's and Caregiving Conference that we here at the Alzheimer's Foundation of America is offering.
So if you're just tuning in, thank you so much for watching Good Morning Miramar. I'm Tamara G, your host, and we have with us today Charles Fuschillo. He is the president and CEO of the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, and they are going to be doing a free, you heard me, free Alzheimer's and Caregiving Conference in Boca on November 19th. It's going to be at the Boca Raton Marriott at Boca Center. And of course, it is free to register and to come. Bring your loved one. If you're a caregiver, come. If you have someone who is living with Alzheimer's, have them come as well. But I don't think people realize that, to pay for this, you would be paying thousands of dollars for the expertise that you guys are bringing, and particularly for free.
Well, thank you. And that's why we encourage individuals to really come to learn about what they can do to be proactive about their own lives and lower the risk of accessibility to potentially being affected by Alzheimer's disease. But what's really important too is we have local exhibitors there with local resources. I'm going to educate everybody there in the beginning of the conference about the services we offer here at the Alzheimer's Foundation of America that, again, are free of charge. And it really starts with our helpline, Tamara, that's open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's staffed by licensed social workers that are dementia specifically trained. There's a toll-free number if you don't mind. I'd love to give it
Sure.
out. It's 866-232-8484. And I encourage everybody, if you're concerned about yourself, your own memory, or a loved one, just take the first step, make that call.
866-232-8484.
That's correct.
And it's toll free. Open staff 9 to 9 with licensed social workers. So I want to ask this question too, because you brought up something, Charles, that probably scared a lot of people if they heard it. That you said that you all have dealt with clients and people as young as 29.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a
yeah.
woman, I'll give you her first name, Katie. She was 29, her husband was 29. They had a 4-year-old son, recognized the difference in her husband's behavior and it really spiraled and was finally diagnosed. Unfortunately, he passed away at 34 years old. But you want to talk about, a caregiver journey. A month after her husband was diagnosed, her mother died. A month after her mother died, her father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's as well. So fast forward, 10 years later, her dad's still alive. Her son is like 16 years old now,
Mhm.
for between 14 and 16 years old. And she's become a strong support system for so many people because of her journey. So as we started off this discussion, people think as they age, they're going to get this disease. It's not a normal part of aging. Again, we've dealt with people in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s as well.
So where are we when it comes to research then, Charles, as far as number one, how do we stop this? And number two, how do we get rid of it?
Well, we'll go back to living a healthy lifestyle. Be proactive about your own health. Don't drink, don't smoke. Make sure you exercise every day. And something that's so critically important, stay connected, stay socially connected, social engagement, exercising your brain, doing something that you haven't done. Maybe learn a different language. Ballroom dancing, Tamara, is great. From head to toe, you have to know every step where you're moving. I
Hmm.
mean, things like that are great. Use your less dominant hand to brush your teeth. Without knowing it, you're exercising your brain. So practice these good, healthy aging tips, which is so critically important. Where are we with research in the past couple of years? There's been some new therapies that slow down the progression. We're encouraged by that. We're obviously optimistic that maybe with a combination, it will continue to help. For us here at the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, the finish line is finding a cure for this terrible disease. So we do fund
Absolutely.
research all over the country, in fact, all over the world for new therapies or for a cure as well. And that's the hope that we have to give millions of people.
All right. Well, you asked earlier, you said you were speaking in a room of 250 and, 99% of the people raised their hands and they
Yeah.
were asked, have they dealt with or do they know someone who is living with Alzheimer's? This past weekend, I was actually in Texas visiting my mother, and she wanted to go see her brother who will be 80 in a couple of weeks. And he was diagnosed maybe about over the summer. So it amazed me because when we walked in the door, he knew that it was his sister. He kept
Okay.
saying, "You're my sister. You're my sister." And we would say, "Yes, Mary Ellen is your sister." Mary Ellen, we kept saying, he never could say her by name, but he knew that she was his sister.
Right.
And then my first cousin came over, who looks exactly like his younger sister who has passed away, my
Right.
Aunt Beulah. But he knew when she walked in the door, he looked at her and he said, "You're my
Okay.
sister."
Good.
And and we were like, "That no, that's Belinda, that's."
Yeah.
But then finally, she just ended up telling him, yes, she was Beulah. Um,
Right.
but he couldn't say their names,
Right.
and it's just weird how he can remember something. He knew he was going to be 80 in a couple of weeks. He knew that, but then he couldn't remember his sister's name.
Yeah, this disease is so complex with people. It's obviously dealing with the brain. Everybody's different. Everybody reacts differently. There's so much that's unknown.
Yeah.
This was discovered in the early 1900s by Dr. Alzheimer's. Think about that, what I'm saying, in the early 1900s. We're here, it's 2025. There's just so much that's unknown because of the complexities of the brain, and everybody's different how they react to this. Listen, my mother-in-law at the taping of the show is left New York. She's on her way back to Florida. She lives in
Mhm.
Delray. This past summer, she celebrated her 93rd birthday.
Amen.
Sharp as a tool. She's going to be at the conference. So everybody's different.
Right. Everybody's different. And, we're just blessed that he's still here.
Yeah.
But I mean, he can remember now. He did tell my mother, you're older than me, right? And she's like, oh, no, no, no.
He wanted that to happen.
Exactly. She was like, oh, I'm number three. You're number two. I'm number three. So, but, I would love for you to talk about that with caregiving because I know a lot of people get exasperated. They get frustrated with, having to say the same things over again, having to explain the same things over again. But truly there's help for the caregiver as well.
You're absolutely correct. And caregiving is a patience game. We always like to tell caregivers, remember to take care of yourself. Take a time out, avoid caregiver burnout, step away. First of all, you need a caregiving team. I said those numbers in the beginning, nearly 600,000 people in Florida, over 7 million people nationwide. Take those numbers and times it by three or four as it with a caregiving team. You could see the millions, tens of millions that this affects.
Mhm.
It's important that you develop a caregiving team because you can't go on this journey alone. And part of the team is us, the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. We have support services, whether they're in person, virtual, or just telephonic. It could be a support group. It could be as little as just calling that toll-free number,
Mhm.
866-232-8484. Talk to a licensed social worker, and they are properly trained in dementia care. It would be a complete confidential call, but they can get you through the journey that you're going through as a caregiver. So there's so many support services that we offer here, and we're also going to bring them to Boca at the conference on November 19th.
Absolutely. And again, doors open at 9. They are going to give you breakfast. It is totally free. I'm looking at, obviously what is going to be talked about there at the Alzheimer's and Caregiving Conference in Boca. You've got brain health and Alzheimer's disease, trials, treatments, and prevention. You've got related disorders, strategies for interpreting and addressing behaviors, the road to better treatment, a caregiver's guide to clinical trials. So just a lot of information that is totally free, folks. So if you do have the time and you are dealing with this in your life, then you need to be there on Wednesday, November 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Boca Raton Marriott at Boca Center. Again, totally free. And you can always go to alzfdn.org/tour to sign up. But they do need to know that you're coming. So please sign up and let them know that. I would love also to talk about this with you, Charles, too, is when it gets to that point where you have to make the decision to put your loved one in a home or someplace because you can't handle it anymore for whatever reasons. You still have to work, you still have a family to raise. They may be getting violent. It just may become more than you as a daughter or a son or a parent can handle. How do you talk to those family members? Because I know there's got to be a lot of guilt that they feel like they're kind of giving up on their loved one.
That's the whole thing. There is a lot of guilt. And I'll go back to a couple of years ago. We held a conference in West Palm Beach.
Mhm.
And I remember I met an individual there, and he said to me, I'm leaving the conference, and tomorrow I'm bringing my father to assisted living center in West Palm Beach. So I called him that night, and I said, Bill, how'd you make out? He said, it was horrible. He said, my father said to me, what did I do wrong? Are you leaving? So the guilt is something. But I said to him, do you think you're properly trained and can you handle,
Right.
the different stages that he was going through? And he says, I can't. So I said, you've given him to people who are experts in the field and they're professionals and they're properly trained. So you have to ensure that you want to have the best care for your dad. And he said, absolutely. And that helped him. And that's what we discuss to families. We go through the steps. What's going on right now in the person's life that was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease? What can you do and what can't you do? And then when you break it down that way, they see that they're at a state where, as a care partner, there's really limited now what they can do and how they can properly care. So it's comforting to know that your loved one is going to be in a safe facility,
Hmm.
safe residence, and they're going to have staff that is professionally trained that can properly take care of them. You're not pushing them off anywhere.
Right.
People, and it becomes very difficult. Think about a couple that's married 50, 55, 60 years. They're together for, most of their lives. It's a very tough decision. But when you make that decision knowing that you're at a point where you can't properly care for them anymore, that others will, you still have the opportunity to go there every single day and see them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because that it comes with, putting alarms on doors so that they don't walk out.
You
Um,
want to prevent wandering, but
yeah.
we'd like to always give advice when you make that difficult decision, try to make their room familiar with where they're living right now as
Okay.
well. Pictures, maybe furniture, maybe blankets, obviously, maybe the lighting, the lamp, the night table that was next to the bed. Make the room familiar with the settings that they've had all their lives.
Sounds good. All right. That number, once again, if you are a caregiver or if you are just wanting to talk to a social worker, it is free. That's 1-866-232-8484. 866-232-8484. And of course, Charles, please invite people once again to the big event that is happening in Boca. So it's right up the road. Anybody can come from Miami-Dade to Broward County to Palm Beach County.
Absolutely. This is the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, Alzheimer's and Caregiving Conference. It's a free conference on Wednesday, November 19th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Registration starts at 9 a.m. with a free breakfast.